Okay, so it's Cat Stanley, Space Demon, coming at you again. And today I want to talk about the time Paul Stanley took a hatchet to one of Eric Carr's songs. Okay, so Eric Carr replaced original Kiss drummer Peter Criss following the recording of the band's Unmasked album. Eric Carr would join the band as drummer for that tour. He would go on to play on the band's follow-up album, Creatures of the Night. In 1982, that album, of course, was very disappointing and it tanked in the United States. The subsequent tour saw the band playing to mostly empty arenas in the United States. So the band decided they needed to shake things up a bit. They decided to take off their trademark makeup. They made a huge show of it. They went on MTV. It was the unmasking of Kiss in an effort to jumpstart their flagging career. And they entered the studio in 1983 to work on their first non-makeup album, the album Lick It Up. Now, of course, the big song from that album would be the title track, Lick It Up. They made a music video for that song. Got a lot of airplay on MTV back in the day. And there's another song off that album. They got some radio airplay. It's a song called All Hell's Breaking Loose. It was a song that drummer Eric Carr had brought to the band. Now, Eric Carr, in addition to being a drummer, he was also a very talented vocalist, a multi-instrumentalist, a songwriter. He also played guitar. So he had written this song, All Hell's Breaking Loose, and he had presented it to the band. And in 2003, here's what Paul Stanley had to say about that track, All Hell's Breaking Loose. He had said that Eric had brought it to the band, and it was written in an open tuning, and he said that Eric Carr was very proud of this song that he had written for the band. And Paul Stanley says this: it was very Zeppelin-ish, like Led Zeppelin. He says, Eric came up with the whole track, and I went in and came up with the rap. There's a part during the verse, Paul does this little rap thing. Now, rap music was still pretty new at the time, wasn't quite as big as it would become. This predated Run DMC. But Paul does this rap in the song. I don't know if he was trying to quote unquote rap or if it was something that basically just a talking thing. But he goes on to say this: Gene came up with the All Hell's Breaking Loose chorus. Eric was a very sensitive guy and was completely destroyed at hearing what he believed was the ruination of his song. Eric hated it. I'm not quite sure what he heard over it in his mind. He enjoyed the fact that he had written a song for the album. Eric was always more frustrated by what he wasn't than thrilled with what he was. When something wouldn't get used or got altered, he only saw a half full glass. I just remember his jaw hitting the floor when he heard what had been done. I'm smiling as I say it because it was just so clearly off from what he heard. But the alternative would have been to do something that would have turned into mimicry of something else. So apparently Paul Stanley had felt this track was too close to Led Zeppelin, and then it would basically just be a poor knockoff. So they took this track by Eric Carr with this opening guitar riff, this cool opening riff, and they transformed it into something that sounded a little bit more unique than just a Led Zeppelin knockoff. And Eric Carr was very disappointed of it. Personally, in defense of Paul Stanley, All Hell's Breaking Loose, it's a very good Kiss song. Now, personally, I find the rap a bit cringy, but, overall, it's a really good Kiss song. It's a pretty good rocker from that record. The chorus, All Hell's Breaking Loose. Everybody, have you heard the news? Maybe a bit weak, but overall, it's a really good song. I rock out to it when I listen to that record. But apparently, Eric Carr was far from what he had envisioned, and he was very disappointed. Now, Mark St. John, who would play guitar on the band's follow-up album, Animalize, did have this quote to say about Eric Carr. Eric Carr, God bless his soul, was a great drummer. Nice guy. We hung out together a lot. And here's what he says. He says, he seemed frustrated a lot. he was being held back a lot. He wanted to sing live. He was always pushing for that. Probably part of this was Eric Carr's frustration. It seems like he wanted to do a lot more. Now, originally, the band's vision, as per Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, was a heavy metal Beatles. They wanted to model themselves after the Beatles, 4 unique personalities with everyone in the band writing and singing. And they had kind of abandoned that following the release of Unmasked, following the departure of Peter, Chris, and Ace Frehley, where it basically became the Gene and Paul show. That original Beatles model had kind of gone out the window with all 4 band members singing and writing. It was basically just the Gene and Paul show. So when Eric Carr entered the picture, maybe he was more under the impression that it would be like a Peter, Chris, or a Ringo situation where they'd throw him a bone, you know, one song on every record that he could write and sing himself. And when he got there and found out it was going to be a bit different of a situation. Now, Eric Carr wouldn't get thrown a bone in terms of a lead vocal until the 1988 compilation Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, where they actually had him sing Peter Criss's old number, Beth. And, you know, Eric Carr may have had some ambivalence about singing that song, because here's what Bruce Kulick had to say about the recording of Beth with the new lead vocal featuring Eric Carr. Having Eric Carr sing Beth was torture for him. A knife at Peter was thrown for sure. Now, I don't know, when he says torture, I don't know if it was torture for him in terms of the performance, or maybe he felt a little guilt at singing Peter Criss's big number. But Paul Stanley has mentioned that at Eric Carr's funeral, Peter Criss did show up, and Peter Criss told him that Eric Carr had been calling him. So maybe Eric Carr, maybe he felt a little guilt at doing that. This is just speculation on my part. Maybe some of you out there can corroborate or refute that. But maybe there was a little guilt. Kiss would finally throw Eric Carr a bone in terms of a lead vocal on a record with the song Little Caesar off of the Hot in the Shade album. It's actually a really good song. Little Caesar, Eric Carr lead vocal. But that's the video. Let me know what you guys think. Paul Stanley butchered Eric Carr's song, All Hell's Breaking Loose. Turned out to be a good song in defense of Paul. Just not what Eric Carr had in mind. Always interested in hearing your perspective on things. Let me know what you think. As always, I hope you dug it, man. And we'll see you next time.
Who's here?